Welcome. Let's see how we can make sure our Infernal Flame is not an obstacle for us when setting up any build. We can see the Infernal Flame cost for the spell in our Barrier Invocation is 641, as well as our spell to generate energy. When we cast any spell, our flame will fill, and we generate charges for Barrier Invocation. Maximum flame is 922, which means we will not fill our flame with one cast, so we cannot create a loop, as we don't generate energy every cast. We can see that eventually we run out of charges. Demon form gives us extra skill levels, which increase mana cost. Because our cost was too low, we can increase it with support gems, so that we fully fill our flame each cast. We must always first charge our Barrier Invocation with another spell, such as our Curse, before casting our main spell. After using a flask, and once we have our maximum number of charges, we can start casting our invocation. Remember, if we only use one spell, our cost must be higher than our maximum Infernal Flame, so it fills in one cast. If we generate charges to use the invocation again, it means we are able to generate enough energy to sustain a loop. As we see here, we do not need to use our other spell to generate energy, and our flame fills instantly. Now let us just see what happens if our spell has a cost higher than our maximum flame, and we can generate extra charges, because of our higher energy gain from Energy Shield. Once we have fully charged our invocation, we can see that each time our flame fills up, we generate 2 charges, instead of 1, which means we are generating too much energy. If your resistances are not high enough, or your recovery not strong enough, you may find casting too many spells is unsustainable. We have seen that our Infernal Flame, which is based on our mana, will fill based on the mana cost of our spells, which can be increased with skill levels. We can also generate enough energy for 2 charges, and it not be a problem if our mana cost does not fill up our flame in one cast, but does so in 2 casts instead. As you can see, this allows us to freely cast our spell without causing us to die from an unsustainable loop. That is a basic overview of Infernal Flame and mana costs when using a single spell in Barrier Invocation. Unfortunately, it is different with every different spell and combinations of gems, but the same principles will still apply. So what we have here is a demonstration when using more than one Barrier Invocation, as using multiple of them can make the calculation confusing. We have our Comet and an Eye of Winter. The Comet has a cost higher than our Infernal Flame, so it will fill every cast. Our Eye of Winter will fill our flame every 2 casts. We can see that if we use both invocations together, the energy gain from casting either one is shared with both regardless, which lets us generate more energy and cast more spells. Although, we must attempt to improve our damage here, as our Comet can go up to 3 charges, and is flickering between 1 and 2. Obviously more energy gain would solve the issue, but we will try to do so with only our mana costs and Infernal Flame. At the minute, we only have an Eye of Winter, with a Withering Touch which has no cost multiplier, and a Cold Exposure, which will increase costs by 20%. We always have 500 energy, and the cast time tells us how much we need. Spark has a 0.7 second cast time, so needs 70 energy. Eye of Winter requires 110, so if we have 2 sparks and an Eye of Winter, we require 250 energy, which means we can store 2 charges, up to a maximum of 500. We must also note that we have reduced our invocation charges from 4 to 2, which means instead of 4 Eye of Winters, we will cast only 2, but also 4 sparks, as we cast 2 with a single cast. Our flame will also fill faster, which can generate more energy for our Comet. If we find the sweet spot for our gem placement, we can also increase our charges gained. This is simply because Barrier Invocation casts skills in the order you socket them, from left to right. Depending on their mana costs, it may fill your flame after 1 spell, or you may need to cast the first 2 to fill it, depending on what you have. Because we have changed the order, in this arrangement, with 2 sparks first, and then an Eye of Winter, it must cycle all 3 spells to fill our flame. Before, when Eye of Winter was first, or second, in line, the order of spells cast means that our flame was filling within the first 2 casts, and the 3rd cast carries over for extra flame. What you need to do will change It's different for every character, so try as many things as you can. Instead of using 3 spells and getting muddled up on the order of gems, we can simply get rid of one and use another cost multiplier, so long as the cost of both spells combined will fill our flame. If we do this, we see that we take damage much faster, and so have to press our second invocation slower to stay alive. Because we removed a spell, we have 2 spells instead of 3, which cast faster as there is less time to wait for an extra spell, so the time between our flame filling up is shorter, which means we cast faster. Having additional spells act as rate limiters, which stagger cast times and give additional time to regenerate. Reducing the amount of spells, but still being able to fill flame and generate energy, will reduce the time between activations and increase cast speed, as well as energy generation. If we reduce the energy requirement, but also place in a lower cost spell, we are still able to create a loop, but this rate limiting effect still allows us to gain maximum charges, while keeping our damage taken under control. There is also another way to interact with our flame, which requires us to be able to generate a lot of energy. Combined with a low mana cost, we can create a ramping loop in a single barrier invocation. For each charge of barrier invocation that is spent, a spark is released, but we must wait for each spark to cast. This delay gives us a lot of breathing room to regenerate, which eases flask recovery requirements. If we add capacitor, without reducing our mana cost, or increasing our mana, we will quickly find the damage we take from filling our flame twice as much is unsustainable. This style of loop is usually scaled and manipulated with extra mana on gear, so that more spells can be cast before damage is taken, or you can cast the right amount of spells to ramp the charges up to the maximum. Thanks for watching, and take care.